Today's online lesson is about the periodic table. At the end of the lesson today, you should be able to find metals, nonmetals, and metalloids in the periodic table. You should also know what groups and periods are on the periodic table. So as you can see, I've got an image here of the periodic table. I got this image from what is basically my favorite online periodic table, and that's let me scroll back up here. I can write it for you guys. It's www.ptable.com. It's a really nice, easy to read periodic table. You can choose what information you want to see, what information you don't want to see. It's interactive, it's nice. So go check it out when you get a chance. Let's learn a little bit about what's going on here. As you can see, the periodic table, like all tables, has columns which go up and down, and rows which go right and left. And in the periodic table, the columns are called either groups or families. I'll probably usually say groups. So columns are called groups, and the rows that go across, and you can see that there's a lot of elements that are missing from this first row. There's just hydrogen and helium in this first row. And then the second row also skips some space, and so does the third. And then finally when you get to the fourth row, it goes all the way across with elements. But that the rows are, they share a name. Well, the name of the rows is where the name of the table comes from, because the rows are called periods. So these rows that go right and left, those are periods. And that's, it shares the name with the table, the periodic table. So if I ever talk about, group 2, that means these elements right here. And if I ever say, the third period, well, then I'm talking about these elements here in this third period. So as you can see, this periodic table is color-coded in two different ways. Most of the elements symbols are written in black, except a few of them are written in different colors. And that has to do with the state that the element is at room temperature. So if an element is written in black on this periodic table, they're not all exactly like this. But if it's written in black on this periodic table, then it's a solid at room temperature. If it's written in blue, it's a liquid at room temperature, like mercury or bromine, only two on there. Gases are written in red, and then gray is unknown because these elements are created artificially in a lab and they only exist for fractions of a second. Alright, now there are three kind of classes of element, and those three kinds of classes are metals, and you can see that these are all the different types of metals, but these are all metals. And then there are nonmetals, and you can see that there are three subtypes of nonmetals. And then there's a third class called metalloids. Now these groups are made up based on the properties that the elements have. Some properties are considered to be metallic properties. Some properties are considered to be non-metallic. For example, metals are malleable and ductile, which means that you can smash them flat, or you can bend them, or you can stretch them and draw them out into thin wires. Whereas nonmetals are the opposite of that. They're brittle. So if you tried to, smash a piece of sulfur, it would just kind of crumble up. It wouldn't smash flat into a sheet like gold or iron would. And there are a whole bunch of properties for metals and nonmetals, and that's kind of, how we created these groups. But there are some elements that have some properties of metals, but they also have some properties of nonmetals, and those are called metalloids. And even though for this class we're going to kind of always consider the same elements metalloids, in science there's actually a little bit of debate over which of these elements are metals which of them, some people may think that some of them are actually nonmetals, and there's kind of, some of them are kind of flexible. But for this class, we're going to use the following elements as metalloids, and as I'm about to show you, metalloids divide on the periodic table nonmetal elements from metal elements. So let's give them a unique color here. We'll use that light blue for metalloids. We'll use green for the nonmetals, and then we'll use kind of like a red. Well, we'll do red for metals. All right. So let's start with the metalloids. And as you can see on this periodic table, they're this green color. The background is this green color. And they are boron, silicon, germanium, arsenic, antimony, tellurium, and polonium. And as you see, the metalloids create kind of like this little stair-stepped line on the periodic table. So those are the metalloids. Everything to the left of the metalloids in the periodic table, everything to the left is a metal. So all of this stuff, all of these elements are metals, with one exception: hydrogen. Hydrogen is the one exception to this pattern. Now, it might be kind of confusing, but all of these elements that are down here at the bottom, they actually belong in this spot right here. But if we put them in there, the periodic table would be tremendously wide and it wouldn't fit on things very well. But they are also included. These are all metals down here. Ooh. Matter of fact, those metals down there have a specific name. This top row in period 6 right here, they're called the lanthanoids, and the bottom row are called the actinoids. You don't need to know those names, it's just kind of neat. So all of these elements that are on the left side of the periodic table, with the exception of hydrogen, are considered metals. And so that means that everything to the right of the metalloids are nonmetals. So that includes really common elements like carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, sulfur, phosphorus. But it also includes group 17, which is a really pretty important group. They're called the halogens, and they're a pretty reactive bunch of elements. They react pretty easily with things. Non-metals, halogens. And then this group over here on the far right, those are the noble gases, and they actually don't react with much of anything at all, and we're going to learn why in this class later on. But they are also non-metals. So when you look at your periodic table, it's basically divided into 3 regions. You've got the metals on the left, you've got your metalloids in that diagonal stair step, and then to the right of that you've got your non-metals. And the only exception to this pattern is hydrogen right here, which is also a nonmetal. A lot of people think because it's a nonmetal that it actually probably should be over here next to helium, but not enough for it to be printed over there, usually on a periodic table. So metals on the left, metalloids diagonally, and then non-metals on the right. Yeah. And that's it for this lesson on the periodic table and metals, nonmetals, and metalloids. As always, if you have any questions, you can always ask in class. Thanks for watching.